It's David from B2B, and in this video today, I'm going to talk about the 3 systems that you need to grow your B2B business with inbound revenue. And these are the same systems that we use in our own business called B2B. And this is a screenshot here of our marketing scorecard from April 2025. We spent about £10,000 on our marketing, and we generated over £100,000, which is nearly 140K of US dollars in new revenue. So these are the exact same systems we use in our business. This is how we help our partners grow. And I want to share all of those with you today. So hopefully it's a really useful video. It might be quite long. I'm going to go into a bit of detail, and I've got a bunch of thoughts from me in terms of what are the most important things that you need to be aware of with each of these 3 systems. And if we can get this right, we're going to see significant growth across our business, which is obviously what we want at the end of the day. So just a couple of bits of context, a couple of caveats here. Firstly, this is specific to B2B companies. So that's not to say that it won't work for B2C or direct-to-consumer companies, but this is just where I have all of my experience as a head of growth, a fractional chief marketing officer, and then a growth consultant as well. So I've been in this industry for 12 or 13 years now. I've worked in-house, kind of running sales and marketing team, and I've worked with nearly 300 different companies now. So that's where all my experience is. So really this is designed for B2B companies. That's not to say you won't get some results if you're not B2B. Secondly, you need to have all 3 of the systems in place. Otherwise you're not going to see the result. Think of it as a kind of end-to-end system rather than marketing tactics or hacks. Systems are always more powerful than tactics. So in each of them, we've got to think about, okay, how do we do this systematically so that we don't have to keep coming up with new tactics and hacks every 5 minutes. You've also got to have a great product or service. So this is just on the caveat that you already have to have a great product or service, and you have to have a way of articulating that offering with your marketplace that resonates with them. So that connects with them, gets them excited to want to work with you. We call this market resonance. So if you don't have that, that's definitely the first place to start. This is all about revenue growth. So like the front end of your business. So not operations and delivery. That would be a whole separate video. This is just about winning more revenue, getting more customers, and growing your business from a revenue perspective. And if you can do this well, you basically have a money-making machine. So something where you can put $1 in at the start and you'll get 3 to 10 or more in return. And that's an example from our business here. So we spent £10,000-ish. And we generated over £100,000. So it's a 9.6x return on our marketing spend. And we're running at relatively high profit margins. So that's a high return on our lifetime gross profit customer acquisition cost. So when it works well, that's exactly the end goal here. So let's dive in. Hopefully this is going to be super useful for you. So the first piece of the puzzle, the first system, is demand creation. So immediately, this is where a lot of people go wrong in my experience. So they head straight to demand capture, which is the next system that we'll talk about. That's also known as lead generation, and that's coming up next. And they haven't built demand for their products or service. So they're immediately thinking, right, how do I get leads? How do I get some email addresses and push them through a sales cycle? And I would argue you need to spend a good amount of your time building demand and creating demand before you even think too much about lead gen. Obviously, we want to do both, but this is a really important piece of the puzzle that most people forget about. So just think about it. When was the last time that you bought a high ticket product or service? So whether it's a software or a consultancy or an agency or a service provider, when you just saw one touch point with them. So one really great lead generation white paper PDF or one really great piece of content on a platform like LinkedIn. It very rarely happens. More often than not, you're going to have to see someone 5, 10, 15, 20 plus times before making a buying decision. And obviously, the more expensive your solution, usually the more times people are going to have to see you to build up that trust. So the goal of this demand creation is to position you as an individual and or your company as an organization as the best or the only option available within your category. This means you're creating leads of your own rather than fighting over people who are already in market and they're ready to buy. So that's a really powerful shift that we can make as an organization, and will have really dramatic impacts on our returns overall. So it's less about getting someone to buy from you today. We can't really impact getting someone to buy from us today, but we can impact who they think of when they are ready to buy. And that's the kind of key mindset shift here with demand creation. So you're probably asking yourself, how do I do this? And it's pretty simple. You need great content and distribution. So you need the right content built around the right strategy and obviously a system of creating that content. And then secondly, you need the right people to see it at the right time. So what to talk about? Again, I think people really overcomplicate this. I recommend to focus nearly all of your content on your customers' problems and how to solve them. So helping them solve their problems. You could argue this piece of content is helping my customers solve their problems because all of the people that work with me want to grow their business, right? And so I'm helping them grow their business before they're even working with me. So talk about your customers' problems and how to solve them. The second part is your customers' outcomes, the desired outcomes, and helping them achieve them. And then thirdly, the unique insights that you can share with the marketplace. So unique perspectives, hot takes that you can share with the marketplace. And then very occasionally, you're going to talk about your product or service. But the vast majority is going to be based, 80% plus is going to be based on helping your customers solve their problems, helping them achieve their desired outcomes, educating them, and sharing your unique point of view so they start to see the world in the way that you see the world. I do recommend having some sort of point of view. Like if you try and please everyone, you're going to end up, no one's going to see your content. You're going to end up pleasing no one. You don't need to be Andrew Tate. You don't need to be Andrew Tate, but don't try and be things to all people. So have a point of view and stand for something in your marketplace and become known for something. And that's really what you want with this content. I always recommend to pick 1 or 2 channels to go after. Again, I had a conversation with a company just recently, I think it was earlier this week, who they're investing in all of these different marketing channels. So they're doing SEO, they're posting on YouTube, they're posting on LinkedIn, they're doing email marketing, they've got an SDR team, etc., etc. And it's not really generating the result they want. And it's because it's not a cohesive strategy and they're doing a lot of things, but they're not necessarily doing any of those things really well, in my opinion. So pick 1 or 2 channels. For most B2B companies, again, this is a massive generalization, but most B2B companies are going to be looking at LinkedIn. You're maybe going to be looking at Google search, depending on your product or service, and then maybe a platform like YouTube if you want to do some more long form video. If I had to just pick one to give as advice to all B2B companies, it would probably be LinkedIn. That's where people are hanging out. It's a great place to reach your customers. And although it's getting more and more competitive, it's still a really powerful place to generate new business. So start by creating organic content and then run ads to that content when it starts to work. So again, when you start running ads, you don't need to suddenly change all of your content strategy. Just create the same content and use ads to distribute it so that you can get more reach with that same content. And like I said, the goal of this content is not necessarily to generate leads today, although it will generate you leads today. It's to position you as an individual and your company as the best or the only option available within your category. So it means you can create leads of your own rather than fighting over people who are already in market. And then roughly we talk about the 7-hour rule, which is a concept I think Google came up with in the first place, which is if you can get your customers to consume 7 hours of your content, then that usually puts them in a place where they're ready to make a buying decision. So obviously that's an average. It doesn't necessarily need 7 hours, etc., etc. The main thing to think about is the more of your content they can consume, the easier it will be to do steps 2 and 3, which is to capture that demand you've created and then take that lead and convert it into revenue or sales. So that's some thoughts on demand creation. I really hope that's useful for you. The second system here is something we refer to as demand capture. So pretty simple concept. So now that we're creating all of this demand, how do we turn that demand into leads and then potential revenue for our business? This does not need to be super fancy. Again, we don't need a complicated funnel with an opt-in, with a PDF white paper, with a really complicated automated email sequence that someone gets after they opt in. That's cool, but it's not necessary. I think we really need to rethink the term lead in general. Somebody who likes your post on LinkedIn or subscribes to your YouTube channel or signs up for your email newsletter is just as much of a lead as someone who opts in for a PDF or they opt in for some sort of lead magnet and give you their contact details. But by the same logic, you can use a lead magnet in exchange for someone to just comment on your LinkedIn post and kind of raise their hand or digitally raise their hand to say that they're interested in something you have to offer. You don't need their phone number. You can just send them a message on platform and ask them how they're doing and just start a conversation from there. So this is a big bugbear of mine. I think we really need to rethink how we talk about leads. People think if it's not in a spreadsheet and I don't have their email address and their phone number, then it's not a lead. And I would disagree with that. Much of the demand capturing can even happen outside of your website as well. So a lot of this can happen, for example, in your LinkedIn DM. So if you're creating great content on LinkedIn and you're finding that your ideal customers are liking that content or they're viewing your profile, then why not start a conversation with them? And then that may well lead to an opportunity to have a conversation with them and see if you can solve their problems. So they don't even necessarily have to visit your website. Having said that, if they do, I really think it's important for all B2B companies to have something that I refer to as marketing assets. Now, this is a non-negotiable in my opinion. So these are pieces of marketing content that are designed to take traffic and attention. So let's say you're generating traffic and attention on LinkedIn or Google, and it takes that traffic and attention and it turns it into lead. They're very purposefully tailored. We follow a framework that really gets someone bought into your business and what you're doing, and then it gets them to want to work with you. So think about, what do people view when they're aware of our organization and they want to learn more? If it's just a pretty bland landing page on your website and a couple of testimonials, I think you're missing a trick, in my opinion. I don't think that's going to do the job that you want it to do. So for me, the non-negotiables for all B2B companies are great case studies. So not just a testimonial, a clear sort of before and after journey in a case study form, and showing the clear business impact of having worked with you. These can be anonymous, if they need to be anonymous. They don't have to be, there are ways to get around it if you don't have great case studies today, but you need some form of case study to show your customers to say, here's what we did, here's where they were before, and then here's the outcome from that, and that's the business outcome. And then the second part is a sales letter, which is a written version, or a video sales letter, which is obviously just the video version of a sales letter, which basically articulates your point of view, and it does a lot of the heavy lifting in your sales process. So it's designed to take someone who's got some interest in potentially learning more about your product or service, and it takes them from that and it gets them excited and it converts them into a lead. So in my opinion, marketing assets are super important in this demand capture process. And we can have just a very simple process for all of the demand that we're creating. Like, people care about what we have to say, people are liking and commenting on our content, people are getting nurtured by that content. We just need simple systems to take that attention and traffic and convert it into leads into our business. And then the third system, which we need here, is lead conversion, or a sales system. So now that we have captured that demand or that lead, we now need to take that lead and convert it into revenue for our business. Again, this can be very simple. It can be a very simple sales process that turns leads into revenue. Yes, you need a good structure and you need to think about how your frameworks are working and so on and so forth. But it's not about closing deals. This is about having conversations with human beings and seeing if you can help them. And just as an example, I had a call right before this with a startup who are going through a funding round at the moment. They don't have any budget to work with me right now, but they might well do in the near future. So I took 45, 60 minutes with them. I gave them a whole bunch of advice on their growth strategy, which hopefully they can apply even before working with me. And then when they do get that funding, I'm going to be the first person that they turn to. So think about it less in terms of I need to close deals today, and think about it more in terms of have a conversation with someone and genuinely try to see how you can help them grow their business. And you'll often find this leads to more conversions overall. And that's one of the sort of paradoxical parts of this. And it's sort of the same with your marketing. Like, if you're not trying to generate a bunch of leads and you're just trying to share valuable information, you actually end up generating more leads overall. And that's kind of the ironic part of this. So people way overcomplicate sales processes, in my opinion. Here are some of the things that I think you don't need in order to close big deals. So number one, fancy proposal templates. I've closed big deals without even using a proposal at all. just sharing information. I don't think, unless you've got a really complicated offering, or if you're working with really big companies, you need more than a few sales meetings per client. Again, if you've structured it in the right way, you should need 1 to maybe 3 meetings max. But any more than that, I think there's something wrong in your sales process, in my opinion. You don't need any hard selling tactics. You don't even need to be good at sales. In my opinion, some of the best salespeople are just great consultants in the B2B marketplace. So just remember as well, if you've done step 1 and steps 2, so if you've done your demand capture and demand creation process really well, it's going to make your sales process so much easier. For example, let's look at 2 scenarios here. So scenario A, the first touch point is a cold message on LinkedIn or via email. It's obviously an outbound process. They've not watched any of your content. They don't understand your company's origin story and your philosophy as an organization. They don't have any knowledge of your case studies and track record, and therefore their trust level is going to be really low. Versus scenario B, the first touch point is a piece of value-based content on LinkedIn, for example. They've come to you inbound to say that they want to work with you. They've watched more than 7 hours of your content, and so they're really familiar with you as an organization. They understand your company's origin story and your philosophy and how you think about the thing that you do. They know your track record and they've read your case studies, and the trust level is obviously going to be high. So of these 2 scenarios, which do you think is going to be easier to close and have a shorter sales cycle? I'll leave you to guess the answer to that. Obviously it's scenario B. And so that's what we want to try and do with our marketing. If your sales is feeling really hard work, it's probably that we're doing something slightly wrong. And then finally, I just want to talk about the way that people buy things as well and how to structure your sales process. So first, people need to be aware of you and your products and service, and you want to do that with your marketing. The next thing before they buy your product or service is they need to adopt your thesis. So this is when I'm talking about your philosophy as an organization or your point of view as an organization. So for example, in our business, it's our point of view is our growth protocol, which is how we think about growth. There's a full breakdown. It's 20 minutes long of our whole end-to-end growth protocol on our website. And I want someone to watch that before speaking to me, because if they haven't watched that, then there's no context on how we think about growth. So they need to buy into that philosophy, and they need to know that that's a good fit for their business before we even try and talk about, okay, how can we actually help them put it into practice and so on and so forth. So for example, if you're an AI tool helping people with cybersecurity, you first need people to buy into your philosophy, which might be something along the lines of using AI tools and AI agents to speed up the cybersecurity process. So they need to buy into that before they can buy into, okay, and here are our different packages of how it works in practice. So hopefully that makes sense. So they buy into your philosophy, and then they buy into your vehicle, which is the product or service itself. So don't start the sales call talking about your product or service, or don't start your marketing talking about your product or service. People need to be aware of you first. And then obviously in the sales process, the first step is discovery. So figure out where they are, where they want to get to, whether you can help them. Then you need them to buy into your thesis. And only after they bought into your thesis can they even consider buying into your product or service. So try and sell things in that order rather than trying to skip steps. Some people just go straight to product, or they go awareness to product, and there's no kind of buying into the point of view in the middle. And then a couple of other simple hacks, which I'm just going to put in the category of lead conversion. One is offer people incentives to move quickly. It's much easier for you as an organization if people just make quick decisions, and it saves you a bunch of time and energy. So incentivize people to do that. And secondly, I like to give people options as well. Again, we're talking B2B here. I like to give them a couple of options and let them self-select which they feel is better for their business. So that might be different pricing options. It might be just showing all of your different products. But I actually think giving people a couple of options and letting them self-select really makes them feel like they're in the driver's seat, and they can buy the products or services at the price point that is best for their business. So hopefully that's really helpful. Like I said, the 3 systems here are demand creation, demand capture, and then finally a lead conversion process. I've just put a whole bunch of my thoughts here on paper. Hopefully it's useful. If you want some more help putting this into practice, a couple of options for you. There's a video on our website which breaks down our whole growth protocol. It's a 20-minute long video which breaks it down end to end. And ultimately, if you want to speak to me and see if we can help you put this into practice, happy to have a free growth consult with you. There'll be a link somewhere around here or on the website where you can book a call one-on-one with me. We'll talk about your business and talk about how we can help you grow. Awesome. Thanks. Have a good day.